Hi everyone, welcome to the Eniris podcast. I'm here joined today by Dexter Energy, and we will speak about the energy market in Belgium. At our table here, Niels.
Yes, I'm Niels. I'm a software developer there at Eniris. I worked for the Smart Grid One controller, which is recently also in the cloud. I developed also the integration with Dexter, which we will be talking about today. So for the technical point of view, I think I hope to bring some content to the table.
Also joined by Jan.
So I'm actually the CFO and the internal expert of the company. So my role is mostly internal reporting, but I'm generally interested in everything that has to do with financials. So glad to be here.
Yeah. From the side of Dexter, joined by Pedro.
Yeah, hi, this is Pedro. I am a product specialist at Dexter for flexibility optimization product. So that is mostly about unlocking flexibility from renewable assets on the balance market mostly, and just making sure that our product is going into the best we can provide to our partners and our customers.
And also by Philippe.
Yes, nice to be here. So my name is Philippe van Engers and I'm the head of sales at Dexter Energy. So in short, I'm commercially responsible for our expansion.
Okay, and I'm Bart Verreken. One of your co-hosts, but mainly today we will let Jan do the questioning. So Jan, I give you the word.
Thank you, Bart. So, the energy market, it's something that is not well known to most users. It's a very complex thing, and I think it starts with the types of contracts that are being used and that exist. Could you perhaps give a short summary of what there is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. Maybe before that we set the scene a bit and explain what we do at Dexter Energy and why we might be able to answer that question. So Dexter Energy is active in the short-term optimization space. Let's say as a company that provides forecasts for both independent power producers as well as traders. So your classic off-takers, aggregators, and utility companies. Short-term means all from the day ahead to the balancing market. So day ahead, intraday, and the balancing market. So we provide a spectrum of solutions, and we also work together on this. And that's power production forecasting for wind and solar assets, or PV. We do trading strategies, and we do flex optimization. And curtailment being specifically something that's very relevant for the Belgian market this year and going forward.
All right, that's good to hear. I think a lot of topics will come up naturally in the conversation. So I think a good starting point would be the kind of contracts that are there. Can you link these perhaps to the different markets and how they intertwine?
Yeah, sure. So Dexter was founded in 2017, and in these years we've seen the market transitioning. Actually, with the growth of the renewable penetration of renewable assets, right? Mm-hmm. So more and more of wind and solar assets are coming online, and it has a big impact on the markets. At the same time, the costs have come down. So the need or the urge for the government to give subsidies is also going down, and what you'll see is gradually the subsidies are phasing out of these assets that used to be very much needed. Yeah. So what we see is stable revenue streams due to subsidies mainly, and also stable markets. And we're now transitioning into an industry and market where you have a lot of volatility in the prices, with all sorts of reasons, but also subsidies and GOs coming down or phasing out. So with that, we've seen in 15 years ago, new power coming online with 15-year PPAs. Think of a corporation. I think you have quite a few in Belgium. They would come together. They want to be involved in the project, and they would do a long-term contract with a company like, let's say, a Belgian utility, like Lampirie or Luminus.
Right.
And so now, with all these new types of risks coming in and the rewards being a bit skewed, there is a bit of a mindset change in the contracting. So it's not anymore a stable revenue with stable prices, but there's more volatility.
Yeah.
And I think a natural behavior is that the contracts become shorter, because as the future is becoming more uncertain, trying to fix a certain price now could be something that's economic not a good decision 5 years from now.
Right.
So I think in general you'll see that the 15-year contracts that we've used to see are now becoming more 3-year, 5-year, or even shorter.
Right.
So that's one part. I think another part is the corporate PPAs. That's also more a thing right now, and that's I think a contract directly with a company like Google. So I think Aspiravi did a corporate PPA with Google.
Yeah.
And we'll see more of that, I think, in the future.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's a great introduction. Yeah, good to know. So risk means indeed a new opportunity for forecasting, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How does it work in general?
So I'll go first, and maybe you can add on, right? So what it means is that let's talk from the perspective of your customer, which is the independent power producer, right? They de-risk themselves by getting a fixed fee for their production. And so all the risks moved to the off-taker or the utility that takes on that buys the power for a certain period of time. And now what we see is that, again, more renewables coming online, so there's more imbalance volume because more unpredictable revenue or energy sources are producing our energy, our power. So with that, it becomes more unpredictable, and therefore there's more risk, because this risk is priced in. And that's what you see now with the volatility and with the spreads between the different prices.
And with spread, you mean, could you elaborate a little?
Yeah, sure. So we always talk from a short-term perspective. Again, day ahead to balancing. So for us, it's a spread, for example, between the day ahead and the balancing market.
Right. Okay.
But it could also be the spread between day ahead and intraday, or intraday in the balancing price.
Yeah. So you really make a lot of combinations between these markets in your forecasting.
Well, for our forecasting, it's one thing is price,
right,
and the other thing is the production, right?
Yeah.
So we see these two as separate.
Okay.
So we try to develop the most accurate power production forecast. So that let's take a trader or an IPP that wants to know how much to nominate for the day ahead market. So you need a forecast a day in advance. So you want to be as accurate as possible to give the most accurate number on how much you're going to produce the next day. Yeah. Which is hard because it might be that you expect sun, but then there's a big cloud. I think the Netherlands and Belgium are small countries, so a cloud can have quite some impact. And so that's where your risk is, of being off of your forecast, because you nominated your day ahead position based on the forecast. Forecast is wrong, and so now you need to reposition to prevent imbalance.
Right. And can you, for example, also tell us something about how assets go into that? What I mean is, for example, can you optimize with battery usage, for example, in this entire scenario?
Maybe one for you.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe to take a bit of a step back, I think indeed what Philip mentioned, right, that now the IPPs are being squeezed or need to balance or have this risk in their hands and see how to navigate it. Yeah. So I think an important thing is on the spread side is what you know now. So like let's say on day ahead, right? You need to nominate how much you're going to produce and what's going to happen on real time, right? So on the imbalance side. So if you have an accurate forecast on your volume side, so how much you're going to produce, that's good because let's say if you can have like a perfect forecast, which of course that's very unfeasible, but like if you can have that, you know that you won't have any imbalance risk on real time when you don't know what's going to be the imbalance price at that moment. So that's where the risk comes from. Right. Not knowing that. So coming to how we can use it. So on the one side is of course have as accurate as possible that imbalance side, the volumetric side, how much you're going to produce. Yeah. But also what is the price side? So what is the market doing? Right, so even if you know that you're completely accurate in your imbalance, in your volumetric side, if you know that there's a bias over the spread, so if it's going to be long or short, I know what it means is like if it's going to be the imbalance price much higher or much lower than the day ahead, Then you can also play, okay, it's advantageous, so that's where the flexibility or the trade optimization comes from.
Yeah.
My position might be better to be on a certain position outside from what I know is going to be my forecast perfectly, which is not the case, but let's say I assume it's perfect.
Yes.
It's more advantageous to go into a certain position. And that's where it comes from, all the renewables, asset or solar or wind. You can also do that with a battery. It's a bit more complex, the collocation, but we can go into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key thing here is how you can optimize your position based on the certainty that you have now compared to the future, right? And of course, the longer that time frame is, so day ahead to imbalance would be 24 hours.
Yeah.
And there intraday you will reduce it, and of course the uncertainty will be reduced, and hence normally the risk and the volatility will go in that same direction.
Yeah. And about the uncertainty and the accuracy level of the prediction, can you give us a confidence interval or something, or can you tell us a little bit about how precise the prediction can be?
So I think maybe Philip, we can go into what power forecasting, so the volumetric side of predicting how accurate the forecast is, and I can give you an example of more the price, which is what I'm more I work more with. So
Sure. So for power, it's all about your accuracy level, right? From what you predicted versus what your actual production is, right? And then you calculate the error of what you deviated from that. We use different types of risk or accuracy metrics, so it depends on who you ask. And maybe a bit too technical, but we look at the NMAA, so the normalized mean absolute error.
Right.
But let's not go too much detail. It's all about can we give a confidence level? So is this forecast error that we, let's say, where we look at what we try to beat or where we try to get better in? But then it's always, it depends. So it depends for a company like Dexter, mainly on the fact that our company is machine learning based, right? Okay. AI.
Yeah.
So it means that the data that we get in, that's the data that our models train on. The better the data, the better the output. That's what we know for sure. Some countries are notoriously more hard to forecast than other countries, just because of the circumstances. Often has to do with the weather, or like in Italy, it's more hilly, it's close to the sea. It's harder to forecast than it's in Belgium or the Netherlands, which are pretty flat, especially in the Flanders region. And so for us, forecasting is not only about weather models. Of course, it's a very big, very important input, but it's also understanding why an asset is not producing while we did expect it to produce because the sun is shining and the wind is blowing.
Right.
And here you think about availability or the unavailability of an asset. So maybe there's some maintenance work going on. I think that's very, very important that you understand when you do maintenance. But also curtailment, whether that's being curtailed by the TSO or you're doing your own commercial curtailment.
Yes, of course.
Because of market
conditions.
Indeed. So if you have all this data and there's more to it, for example, do you have what we call that special weather situation type of data, like icing or high wind shutdown? These are moments that don't happen that often, but when they do, often the market is very much on the wrong side. So it results in a huge imbalance for you. If you're able to forecast this, you become more accurate. But how are you able to forecast this? Probably you need to have that data historically for a machine learning company to be able to forecast that. Again, it depends on the data, the country, and
we have also some kind of the same problems. Since I think the audience also would like to know what is the main difference between our both companies. So we started with our monitoring tool, and there you have already these unpredictabilities about the weather, why are solar parks not producing the right amount of kilowatts or megawatts. So we also look at weather data, etc. But where Dexter starts is they do the forecast in megawatts and in euros, and we do like more like forecast on the assets themselves in order to understand how well are they performing. On more like an operations and maintenance level. And maybe Niels, you can also elaborate on where you see yourself coming into the story of Dexter, and maybe you can also elaborate a bit on what is the difference between our both companies?
Yes, sure. So in my introduction, I quickly mentioned, so I'm not from the business point of view, but mostly on the software point of view. So where we come into picture is we have this SmartQuid 1 controller. Yeah, we have 1 or 3 of them lying on the table. This is, so to speak, your universal interface to any brand of solar interface or solar inverter. So with this device, we can, control, I think, most of the brands that are out there in Europe. We also have this product without the hardware, where we have it somewhere in the cloud, allowing us to control a lot of assets at the same time, like solar parks, speaking of multiple megawatts. And we can interface with party like Dexter, such that they can control this group of devices. So they have no idea about what the brands are. Probably it's not about the response times or the peak capacity. So that's the stuff that we deal with. We ensure that the communication all goes well, and you do the market analysis, the decision making, and we forward and show it to the customers, make sure that everything is correct.
Yeah, maybe that ties back to
That's
the point
Yes.
Peter was going to make.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because like as Philip mentioned, like the accuracy on the volume side, on the generation side, well, you have to have really good input data and all of this to make it accurate or valuable. But that's that, right? You know that your solar park will produce 10 megawatt hour tomorrow at noon, and you'll sell that on the day-ahead market. But on like more of my side of things, on the imbalance price forecasting and the optimization on top of it, the accuracy doesn't really make too much sense on absolute terms, right? It doesn't really matter too much if you predict exactly that the imbalance price is going to be, I don't know, minus 100, or if it's going to be minus 120, let's say, to curtail, right?
Yes.
The important thing is the performance or the accuracy there is on the performance level in terms of revenue and the operation, which ties to this, right? Because you have some sort of cost of opportunity. At what point would you want to start curtailing, for instance? Normally this is your strike price, right? So let's say you would forego the production at minus, let's say 50, you have some subsidies, GOs or whatever. And if you say you're gonna forecast that the price is gonna be minus 70, then you would start curtailing, right? But it doesn't land on minus 70, it lands on minus 60, while you are off by 10, but still you were on the right side, right? So one thing is the forecast for the price itself and the optimization, but all of that can go well. But then if the actual steering of the asset is not done properly, or if there's a lot of lag and you go into imbalance into the next period, into the next 15 minutes, well, everything is undermined because of the operational side.
Yes.
So that's like two different measures, right? So for power forecasting and for flexibility, it's more on how close you are to the ideal scenario of perfect operational efficiency, not perfect forecast, but operational efficiency.
Yeah, and then if you have to translate both types of solutions, so power production forecasting is really about how accurate were you, right? This percentage error.
Yeah.
Whereby flex optimization, but also trade optimization is way more about how profitable are you with the megawatt hours.
You mentioned flex optimization and trade optimization. Can you elaborate a little bit? Because those are quite
maybe.
Yeah, sure. So I think our trade optimization works mostly based on these big spreads, as we mentioned earlier. Right?
Yeah.
So on day ahead into imbalance, or we're still on the intraday side developing some stuff there, but in terms of day ahead to imbalance, or intraday to imbalance, or intraday to intraday. Right. So you have an expectation of what's happening right now to what's going to happen in real time.
Yes.
But here the key thing is it's based on a spread. So again, if you're going to be over or under supply, and what's going to be the levels compared to the day ahead price. But this can be only on a trading strategy purely, right? So you don't really need any physical asset for this. So you can have a position, and you can be correct your position, and that's just paper trading, we'll call it, right? The difference with flexibility optimization is that you need an actual asset, like physically there, for actual production to be unlocked, right? So you're unlocking the flexibility of that asset. What does that mean? Again, the case of curtailment, you can do whatever positions you had on day ahead in intraday continuously until the point of delivery, right? So whatever your position was, if you know that you had to produce or you sold to produce 10, but in that moment you see that Elia is signaling, oh, we have a lot of oversupply, the imbalance price is most likely going to be minus 500. Okay, you're going to curtail there, hopefully with a good service from Eniris and all, but the whole point there is that you have to have the physical production to be able to do this. It's not anymore about any trading position itself, but the actual asset. So I think that's the main distinction between flexibility and trade.
Yeah, whereby in some countries you do need to have an asset to be able to trade on the day ahead.
Okay.
In a speculative way. So that differs a bit per country. But for flex, nonetheless, right, you can only do this if you produced and nominate on the day ahead market.
Yeah. Makes all sense. Yeah, okay. Baf, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think maybe we should also look into the topic of what Peter was mentioning. You look at the day ahead market, you look at the imbalance prices. Where do you start with our customers? Like, do they care about these price differences? Do you look at these price differences, or is this like communicated directly then from Dexter?
So yes, so when they install this device, by default we only look at the spot market, more specifically at the day ahead prices. When the imbalance, when they are obliged to pay the imbalance costs, then I think Dexter comes into this picture. Are you taking both the imbalance price and the day ahead price into account and do like one set point that's actually good for both of the markets? So how do you combine the two?
So just for trade optimization, it's a spread again between the day ahead and the imbalance market. So it's not the absolute, but it's just the relative one to the other. But specifically for flex, for steering, we only essentially what we do is we try to predict the imbalance price, because again the signals from Elia and any TSO, like in the Netherlands standard for instance, are all be on a minute or lower resolution basis, but the settlement is going to be on a 15-minute, right? So you want to know the sooner you can what's going to be the sell price by the end of the quarter, like the 15 minutes. And then on top of that, we have a layer of optimization to, in the end, translate all of that based on restrictions of the asset into a decision, right? So either produce or not produce.
Yes.
So that's where the connection would come, right? So we have a machine learning model will predict the price. We have an optimization layer. If you have restrictions on how many times you can go up or down, and then in the end, it's should you curtail or produce, and that will we connect to the actual box to steer the asset.
So that takes away a lot of complexity from our side in terms of understanding the real energy market. Then the complexity is more for us on the machine level, like do the actual thing, make sure that you retry in the case the machine is not listening, the asset is not listening.
I really like the fact that we have two completely split responsibilities. So we have it's completely it's exactly complementary. So we take all the responsibility of making communication is okay. Like you said earlier, we have to respond within a certain time window. Otherwise, we might induce some costs in the next and the 15 minutes. And you take all the responsibility in making sure that in a perfect scenario that your trading is correct. So
and just a small question about what's in there for the asset owner in terms of this trade optimization. Do you have like a number in your head, a ballpark? What is like the revenue for or the yield for a company if they make use of a trade optimization from your company?
So again, I will say it depends, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let me tell you. I can mention all these numbers, and you can get like this gold rush feeling. Oh, there's a lot of money to be made. So let me try to tell you what we do in order to provide companies with the strategies and what they can expect. So, like being a machine learning company, our bread and butter is in developing a very solid backtesting infrastructure.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that once we research new ideas for our strategies, we make sure that in the backtest, we only consider data that we could have known at that point in time. And this sounds very obvious, but it's the fallacy of backtesting, is that you incorporate data you didn't timestamp well enough, so you consider data that you could not have known. And so it's
2020.
yeah, so it's very hard to do this to make sure that what you have in a backtest also happens live, right?
Yeah.
That's the first part. The second part is also market impact. So the fact that you are running your strategy is impacting the market, right? So there's a consequence of running the strategy that at some point is going to impact the profitability of the strategy. So if we would have all the Belgian IPPs as a customer and everybody would trade on our signal, then de facto we become the market, and that deflates the value of the strategy. So that's good to consider. So we're again in that backtesting, we're very careful to understand what's our market impact, how much megawatts can we trade.
Okay.
So that's what we do, right? So before we go into the market, we say, okay, what's the performance in the backtest, and what's the impact on the market? So how much can we sell until we start to impact the market and degrading the signal or strategy. And so then we open up shop, right? So we say, okay, here we have a 10 megawatt strategy. It's day ahead to imbalance, right? So you go long or short on day ahead and you let it flow over imbalance.
Yeah.
And then you reap the benefits from that arbitrage opportunity.
Right.
So we take a 24 months, let's say a rolling 24 months backtest. So let's consider now that's May to April is what we have. And then we see that with 10 megawatts, we earn around 12 euros per megawatt hour traded. And there are a lot of other statistics that are important. And again, this number changes over time. It's also dependent on the market.
Yeah.
We've had a very interesting 2022, 2023 with skyrocketing day ahead prices.
Okay.
That obviously helps with your strategy because the spreads become way more impact more significant, and that impacts the profitability. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's way more important not only on an absolute basis that we're good, but also on a relative basis that we're good enough compared to other strategies, either by the traders themselves or by our competitors.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the Belgian market, this is becoming more and more like a thing going on this or doing this price optimization.
So I think it's been a thing in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and in other countries, mainly for the traders, right? Because they are this is their job, right? To provide, to maybe develop their own trading strategies, whether it's manual or algorithmic. For IPPs, it's more new, I would say, right? So when you take our three solutions, power production forecasting, trade optimization, and flex optimization, we typically see that IPP start with flex optimization, specifically curtailment. Right? It helps a lot that we have companies like Eniris that are able to understand the hardware side of trading and then combine it with our intelligence. So it's a good way to start trading, to see, okay, I can sell my production on day ahead, and on top of it, I can earn money or make profits on the balancing market. So we see it not only as, of course, we say it like, we also see it as an opportunity for not only batteries, but also for renewable assets to offer flexibility to the market and make a living on that.
Yeah.
And in terms of we were talking, I was questioning for the Belgian market. You mentioned the Netherlands, but are there from our side maybe constraints now in terms of countries that we would like to tackle, or for you? Are there some other countries? Are there constraints right now, or do we?
From our side, there's no country constraints as far as I can see, because we are mostly tied to the biggest constraint that we currently have is the brands and the models that we support. And if we're speaking about control of an API, we're also dependent on if the brand offers like an API solutions. Like there are several companies like Huawei, but also Sungrow, Solis that offer an API which allows us to control, let's say, thousands of solar inverters at the same time with a few commands. Usually these platforms are not restricted. If they are restricted, then it's restricted like on the European, in the European region or outside the European region. But there's no strict country locks where we can or cannot operate in this way.
Yeah.
It protects.
Yeah, maybe can you talk about building a profitable flex strategy on curtailment, what you need, and then I'll talk about the regulatory side of things.
So I think, well, not to touch on the regulatory, but it really depends if, first of all, if it's allowed. But assuming that it is, for instance, Belgium and the Netherlands have a very similar approach into how to do this from the side of the TSO, right? So in the Netherlands, Tenet and here Elia, both essentially allow or incentivize the parties, not only the producer but also on the consumer side, but for this time, for only on the producer side, to help balance essentially the grid.
Right.
You can do the passive balancing, which is essentially curtailment, or also with batteries. So essentially, they would be procuring in balance.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, Pedro, but you said passive balancing, active balancing, meaning.
Yeah, so it's like the difference would be they will be procuring capacity to balance, right? So normally on AFRR or MFRR, that's what would be active, right? So I would have to go into the market and say, I have this capacity for tomorrow, Elia, if you need it, you can up or down regulate. So I'm actively putting myself into the market.
Right.
If I get the bid clear, all that process, right? Passively, because I'm not in the market with a bid or anything. I just have a solar park, it's producing. I sold it on the day ahead, whatever strategy I had. But like I said, if in that moment Elia is signaling there's an oversupply here, Elia, of course, our forecast on top of it or whatever strategy you use, but if you know that the system has an imbalance, you can curtail and help Elia solve the problem. But you're doing passively, right? So if you choose to do it. So that's kind of the general framework. That's why in the Netherlands and in Belgium, it's similar, but at the same time, there's differences, right? So you have to consider also the technicalities. A really big one is in the Netherlands, in Elia it's only one imbalance price. In the Netherlands, there's two prices.
Okay.
So normally they're the same, but if, not to get too complicated, but if there's up and down regulation, essentially if Tenet has a lot of troubles to actually balance the grid in a 15-minute basis, the price will switch and everyone will get the worst price, so it will be like a penalty. And here Elia doesn't have that. They have more transparency. It's a bit more forward coming into helping, not asking, but incentivizing everyone to help it. So I think just to build that side of flexibilities, you need to understand what are the technicalities in the general sense. It's the market works the same, but what are the technicalities to consider for your strategy, and what are the constraints within the framework of the TSO, the system, and more regulatory, but maybe.
Yeah. So maybe what I wanted to add, for us as a company, we need the right data to make sure that we have a performance strategy. Mm-hmm. So again, per country, it depends on what type of data is available.
Okay.
For us, that will allow us to make a well-performing strategy, right? It's our IP, our secret sauce. So that's also a factor to take into account. So we'll develop the first strategy. We'll show the performance in the backtest, and then we know, is it good enough to commercialize. But first and foremost, it needs to be allowed in a country. I think, like Pedro mentioned, the TSOs in the Netherlands and Belgium are way more, I won't say promoting it, but they have more of a trading mindset, so let the market solve it.
Yeah.
Not only through passive balancing, but also through the ancillary services, right?
Yeah.
So you could also use your solar and wind assets for the AFR market, which I think in Belgium is quite a hot topic right now. Not only your battery. But for example, and we don't know too well, but for some countries it's harder to curtail at the moment. So Italy, I'm not sure whether it's allowed.
So even the passive curtail, the passive balancing.
Yeah, so they prefer, and I know for sure in Germany, for example, that the TSO curtails. All right, that's the grid curtailment. So they are in charge of curtailing on the balancing market. Yeah, and then they don't want interference of, let's say, commercial curtailment from the off-takers or the Axelmarkters in Germany. So it depends per country.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but here the entry barrier is not so high. Yeah.
No, so we went to Belgium some years ago,
Yeah.
and actually the entry barrier is the strike price.
Yeah.
And the strike price is comprised of your GVO, your GO, guarantee of origin, your subsidy often, and maybe your PPA price that you have with your off-taker, if you're allowed to curtail. So if you have a subsidy of, let's say, 75, 100, sometimes even more than 200-300, then there are not a lot of opportunities to curtail, because the imbalance price back then was not going below that strike price of, let's say, minus 300.
Yeah.
Now subsidies are phasing out, imbalance prices are becoming steeper. Everybody talks about the 7th of April in Belgium with such extreme imbalance prices, but that's gonna, in our eyes, gonna happen more often. So more opportunities to say, no, I'm going to curtail because the price difference is so significant.
Right. So it's really going to ramp up still.
Yeah.
There are opportunities for trading.
There are so many market forces driving volatility, and at the same time there are a lot of market forces driving maybe that becomes a bit more stable. But let's see.
Yeah.
Also, like day ahead, right? Day ahead prices, except for 2022 and 2023 with the whole energy situation. But now day ahead prices are very, very like just going down and many times negative. But imbalance prices are still very volatile and the spreads are very high, right? So you can have a really extreme up or downward price. So yeah, also which market you wanna bet on, it's also something to consider.
Yeah. Lots of opportunities left to explore.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
I think that's a good end for the podcast.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunities. So thank you very much, Philippe and Pedro from Dexter. Maybe in the near future we speak again during the podcast. And thank you everyone for listening.
Great. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We like to be here again, so
Yeah,
good to come here again.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.